In a week when Ottawa was supposed to be calm, something happened that nobody saw coming. A move so unexpected, so politically explosive, that it sent shockwaves through the halls of Parliament Hill. For decades, Canadians have seen their share of political betrayals, but this one felt different. When longtime Conservative MP Chris D'Entremont stepped in front of the cameras on Parliament Hill and quietly said the words, "I'm joining Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Liberal Party," Ottawa froze. Within seconds, phones buzzed, networks cut into live programming, and political pundits across the country scrambled for explanations. A floor crosser. A betrayal. A new chapter in Canada's political storm. For ordinary Canadians, it was more than just a party switch, it was a question of loyalty, of trust, of whether their votes still meant anything in this new, turbulent era. Mark Carney, calm as ever, stood at the podium just minutes later. No anger, no gloating, only that steady tone Canadians have come to know. He simply said, "Sometimes, conviction outweighs party lines. Canada's future must come before politics." But behind that calm statement, Ottawa insiders whispered something darker. Because according to leaks from within the Conservative caucus, this wasn't an isolated act. Sources claim that up to 5 more Conservative MPs had quietly reached out to Carney's team in the past week, expressing disillusionment with Pierre Poilievre's increasingly hardline stance and what one staffer called a culture of fear. And that's where the story gets murkier. Because across the border, President Donald Trump was reportedly furious. Sources inside the White House said Trump saw the defections as a sign of weakness in Canada's conservative movement, and he wanted answers. In a late-night post, Trump wrote, "Even Canada can't keep its conservatives in line, sad." The tweet went viral instantly. For Carney, it was both an opportunity and a trap. On one hand, he appeared as the unifier, a leader who could bring moderates together across party lines. On the other, he knew that too many defections could ignite a new narrative, one of bribery, deals, and manipulation. And by the next morning, that's exactly what the headlines screamed. Political bribes in Ottawa? Floor-crossing scandal rocks Carney's Liberals. Every newsroom in the country went into overdrive. But the story refused to stay simple. Because deep within Parliament's inner circles, documents began surfacing, anonymous leaks suggesting that at least one of the defecting MPs had been offered a senior committee chairmanship in exchange for joining the government. Was it true? No one could say for sure. But the narrative was already written, and Carney's enemies were quick to exploit it. Pierre Poilievre stood before cameras in a hastily arranged press conference. He called it a betrayal of the people and the clearest sign yet that the Liberals are buying loyalty with power. The words echoed across news networks and social media. And yet, something strange began happening. Instead of collapsing under the accusations, Carney's approval rating, for the first time in months, began to climb. Analysts were stunned. Why? Because while the opposition screamed betrayal, everyday Canadians saw something else, a prime minister who refused to engage in the shouting, who kept working, visiting hospitals, farms, and flood sites while others argued on television. By midweek, the story took a new twist. One of the alleged 5 defectors was found to have secretly recorded conversations inside the Conservative caucus, audio that reportedly included senior strategists discussing plans to sabotage infrastructure talks with Washington. When those recordings leaked, the country erupted. The clip, just 42 seconds long, was aired on national TV. A voice, alleged to be a senior Conservative advisor, could be heard saying, "If Carney wants cooperation, give him chaos. The worse Canada looks, the better for us next election." It was a political earthquake. And overnight, public opinion flipped. The same Canadians who had been furious at the floor crossers suddenly began seeing them as whistleblowers, patriots who had risked everything to expose political sabotage. Carney didn't celebrate. He didn't even mention the leak. Instead, at a late evening press conference, he stood before a silent crowd and said quietly, Canada deserves leaders who act for the country, not for themselves. If some had to cross the floor to do that, then history will judge them kindly. That line, delivered without emotion, broke through every broadcast feed. Within hours, it was trending across social media. Even global outlets like BBC and CNN ran the story, calling it the biggest political realignment in Canadian history since the Harper era. Trump's reaction? Another post, this time cryptic: Carney should watch his back. Politics can change fast. But Canadians seem to have made up their minds. For the first time in years, the Liberal government's approval surged past 50%. Even provinces that had leaned conservative were suddenly softening, calling Carney measured, modern, and unshakable. Behind the scenes, insiders revealed that Carney had known about the discontent inside the Conservative Party for weeks. His intelligence advisors had warned that internal divisions were widening under Poilievre's leadership, and Carney, without public drama, had quietly opened the door to those who wanted out. It wasn't a bribe. It was strategy. Calculated. Subtle. Canadian. And yet, even as calm seemed to return, whispers continued. Was the leak about the sabotage real, or part of a larger game? Did Carney's office know more than they admitted? Or was it just political theater, a perfectly timed scandal that destroyed his opponents? No one could say. And maybe that's the brilliance of it. By the end of the month, Chris D'Entremont's seat in Parliament no longer symbolized betrayal. It symbolized a new kind of politics, one that blurred the old lines, where loyalty wasn't to a party, but to an idea of what Canada could become. And Mark Carney, the man once mocked as too cautious, too quiet, too economic, had become something else entirely. The calm at the center of the storm. The strategist who turned betrayal into strength. The leader who reminded Canadians that sometimes, the most dangerous moves in politics aren't loud, they're silent. Because in 2025, the real story wasn't who crossed the floor. It was who stood firm when the floor began to shake.